Okay, so now we've actually moved into the forest. This is the Benmore Forest Reserve, and so this reserve has been around for probably 40, 50 years at least, and there's a combination of box and mesmate eucalypts here. And the other thing that you can notice as you look around, you can see that there is evidence of animal life, that there's either possums or koalas have been moving up and down these trees here, and as they move up and down the trees they've been removing pieces of bark. You can also see on the ground that there are tracks through the forest, and those tracks are indicative of the animal movement through the forest, and possibly wombats and kangaroos also, and maybe wallabies are responsible for those tracks through the forest. So as you look around the landscape, you can pick out the different features of the landscape, and here we're looking at some of the biota, the fauna and the flora.
Here we are at a nice old eucalyptus tree, and it's why we've stopped here is, apart from it being a beautiful tree, you can see in the centre here there's what looks like the old trunk of the tree, and it looks like it's actually suffered from some quite severe fire damage and has been burnt out. And it's what the eucalypts do is they can basically be trimmed back right to the surface, and they'll go through a process which is called coppicing, where they'll grow out from the same rootstock or sometimes the same trunk above the ground, and they'll shoot off lots of trunks from the same spot. And so that's an example of natural coppicing, but this is something you often see in forests, something like a state forest that's used for harvesting the firewood. The trees will get chopped down and then they'll grow up as coppiced trees. Also, just next door to this one, there's another tree there which has some evidence of some fire damage. And that's one defining factor of the eucalypt and why they sort of dominate the Australian landscape, is because they can deal with fire quite well. If the fire's not too hot, they just get burnt. They probably lose most of their leaves, and they've got a high capacity to withstand that heat, and then they'll shoot out some new branches and off they go again. So that's probably what's happened in that case.
Well, now we're just to the south of the Benmore Forest Reserve, and we can actually get some idea of what was. And so here in front of me you can see that this is the result of the clearing of the landscape here. All of the trees are most probably ring-barked or knocked down, and that has really led to some of the degradation processes in this landscape. But it's a strange landscape, because as you pan around here, you can notice that there are other impacts, and when we look down into the valley there, we can see that there's quite significant areas of farm forestry occurring. You can see that there's agroforestry, some alley cropping perhaps associated with those agroforestry systems. And the other thing that you can see in the foreground here, you can see the deep incisions into the grazing paddocks there, and that's a function of this increased water recharge that's occurred because all of the trees have been cleared from this landscape. The other thing you can do is you can see the other major impact on this landscape, and that's been the introduction of rabbits. We'll just see in the foreground here that there's actually lots of rabbit warrens, and you may even see the occasional rabbit bounding across the landscape here. And really they have added to the degradation, because this soil is quite erosive, and the rabbits burrow into the soil, and it's their disturbance of the soil that leads to increased erosion potential here.